The great crystal hall stretched above them like a frozen ocean wave. Light danced through its clear walls, casting rainbow patterns on the polished floor below. Ambassadors sat in the far corner of the massive room, watching hundreds of alien beings talk among themselves. Their voices mixed together like the sound of a busy market, but much stranger. Adjusted her dark blue uniform and checked her notes one more time. Today was the day Earth would ask to join the Galactic Concord. After 3 years of careful talks and trade deals, humanity finally had a chance to become full members of the galaxy's biggest government. Next to her sat General, a quiet man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He wore the same blue uniform but with more medals, said nothing, but could tell he was watching everything around them. That was his job. "Remember," whispered to her small team, "we stay calm no matter what they say. We are here to show them we belong among the stars." At the front of the hall, a tall figure stood up. Archon looked like a walking tree made of silver metal. His voice echoed through the crystal chamber when he spoke. "Members of the Galactic Concord," said, "today we review the request from the species calling themselves humans. They come from a small blue planet they call Earth." Felt her heart beat faster. This was it. 3 billion people back on Earth were counting on her to make this work. She had practiced her speech hundreds of times. She knew every fact about human achievements, every reason why they deserve to be here. "Before we begin," continued, "let us examine what these humans have accomplished." A giant screen appeared in the air above them. Smiled. She was ready for this. They would show human art, human science, human exploration. They would see cities reaching toward the sky and ships traveling between planets. But the smile died on her face when she saw what appeared on the screen. War, death, destruction. The screen showed human soldiers fighting in mud. It showed cities burning. It showed people hurting each other over skin color, religion, and pieces of land. It showed factories pumping black smoke into the air and oceans filled with plastic waste. "These are the humans," said, his voice full of disgust. "Look at them. They fight each other over everything. They poison their own world. They cannot even agree on simple things like sharing food or water." Laughter filled the crystal hall. Not human laughter, but the strange sounds that hundreds of different alien species made when they found something funny. Some buzzed like angry bees. Others made clicking noises. The worst was a group that sounded like crying bobbies. A creature that looked like a giant spider made of blue crystal spoke up. "How can these violent children think they belong here? They barely learned to leave their gravity well. Most of their people still live in dirt and poverty." "They are water bags with short lives and shorter tempers," added another voice. This came from something that looked like a floating brain with tentacles. "They live maybe 100 of their years. We have spoons older than their entire civilization." Forced herself to stay calm. She had expected some of this. Humans were young compared to most galactic species. Earth had only been in contact with aliens for 5 years, but she also knew humanity's strengths. She started to stand up to give her prepared speech, but held up one silver hand. "We are not finished," he said. "Let us see more of human achievement." The screen changed again. Now it showed more recent events, humans fighting over resources, political leaders lying to their people, rich people getting richer while poor people suffered, environmental disasters that humans had caused, wars that killed millions over religious differences. "Even now, as they reach for the stars, they cannot stop being what they are," announced. "Violent, selfish, destructive. They want to bring their chaos to the peaceful galaxy." A new voice joined the mockery. It came from a being that looked like a collection of bright lights floating in a jar. "Why waste our time? They will destroy themselves within a few centuries anyway. Violence is all they know." "Their requests for membership are like asking a child to perform surgery," laughed another. "Amusing but dangerous." Felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her face calm. General put a gentle hand on her arm, reminding her to stay in control. Around the hall, more species joined in the mockery. The representatives from the swarm, a species that shared one giant mind, spoke in perfect unison. Individual minds lead to individual wants. Individual wants lead to conflict. These humans prove this truth with every breath. They cannot even agree on how to count time or measure distance, added a slug-like creature from the Trade Federation. How can they participate in galactic government? For 2 hours, sat and listened to species after species explain why humans were not ready. They talked about human violence, human ignorance, human arrogance. They showed more images of war, pollution, and social problems. Finally called for quiet. We have heard enough evidence. The question before us is simple. Should humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Concord? Stood up, she had waited long enough. Honored members, may I speak for my species? Some of the aliens laughed again, waved a dismissive hand. Speak if you must, human, but our minds are made up. Looked around the crystal hall. Hundreds of eyes, sensors, and other organs stared back at her. Some looked curious. Most looked bored. A few looked actively hostile. Thank you, she said simply. I understand your concerns about humanity. We are young, we have problems. We sometimes fight each other. All of this is true. She paused, looking directly at. But we are also capable of great things when we work together. We have art that moves people to tears. We have science that unlocks the secrets of the universe. We have the courage to explore dangerous places because we want to learn and grow. The hall stayed mostly quiet, but could hear some aliens making dismissive sounds. We came here hopping to learn from you, she continued. We wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We believed that together, all our species could build a better galaxy. Pretty words, interrupted. But words are easy. Actions matter more. Your actions show only violence and chaos. Nodded slowly. Then let us show you different actions. Called for the vote. One by one, species after species voted no. The final count was not even close. 834 votes against human membership, only 13 votes in favor. The decision is final, announced. Humanity is full membership. Your probationary status is revoked. Earth will remain under quarantine for another 1,000 years. Perhaps by then you will have learned to be civilized. Gathered her papers calmly. She stood up and looked around the hall one more time. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She smiled. The silence that followed smile felt heavier than the crystal walls around them. Archon stared at the human ambassador, waiting for the explosion of anger he expected. Other council members leaned forward, eager to see how these emotional primitives would react to rejection. Stood perfectly straight. Her voice was calm and clear when she finally spoke. The Terran Federation acknowledges the Galactic Concord's decision. We understand your position and will respect the quarantine you have placed on our system. She gathered her papers with slow, careful movements. No rushing. No angry gestures. General and the rest of the human delegation followed her lead, packing their materials in perfect order. Felt confused. Where was the human rage? Where were the threats and desperate pleas? Every species in galactic history had reacted to rejection with some kind of emotional outburst. They had declared war. They had begged and offered bribes. They had simply started crying. But these humans just packed their bags. Ambassador called out, his silver voice echoing through the hall. Do you have nothing else to say? No final arguments? No appeals to our mercy? Turned back toward the council. Her smile was still there, but now it looked different somehow. Sadder, maybe, or perhaps knowing. Honored Archon, she said, you have made your judgment based on the evidence you chose to see. We respect your right to make that choice. We only hope that someday you will see the full picture of what humanity can be. She paused, looking around the great hall one last time. We wish you well in all your future endeavors. May you find the peace that has so long escaped our troubled species." Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her team followed in perfect formation, their footsteps echoing in the crystal chamber. No one looked back. No one said another word. The massive doors closed behind the human delegation, with a soft whisper of moving air. In the council hall, hundreds of alien representatives sat in stunned silence. This was not how rejection was supposed to work. An ancient being in the front row shifted uncomfortably. Or the wise had lived for 800 years and seen 43 species apply for membership. In all that time, he had never seen anything like what just happened. "Something feels wrong," he whispered to his aide, a younger with bright blue skin. "Humans are supposed to be emotional, unpredictable. Why did they just accept it?" His aide shrugged. Maybe they finally understand their place in the galaxy. But Orr was not convinced. He had studied human history during the 3 years of diplomatic contact. He knew about their wars, yes, but he also knew about their capacity for strategy. Human military leaders were famous for their patience and planning. They could wait years to strike at the perfect moment. "Find out where they are going," he told his aide. "I want to know what the humans do next." Meanwhile, was addressing the council with satisfaction in his voice. "Let this be a lesson to any other primitive species that thinks it can demand membership in our civilized society. The humans have finally learned their proper place." Many council members made sounds of agreement. The crisis was over. The dangerous humans had been put in their place. Order was restored. But across the galaxy, something strange was beginning to happen. Human colonies that had been small but active trade partners suddenly went quiet. The mining station at Tau stopped responding to communication requests. The research outpost near Vega canceled all its scheduled supply shipments. Luna City, humanity's biggest settlement outside Earth, went completely dark to all outside sensors. At first, nobody noticed. Humans were such a minor presence in galactic affairs that their silence barely registered. A few trade companies complained about broken contracts, but there were always contract problems somewhere in the galaxy. The first real alarm came from a trade ship captain named. He had been doing regular business with a human mining operation in the asteroid belt near Earth for 2 years. The humans bought equipment and sold rare metals. It was profitable for both sides. When he arrived for his scheduled pickup, he found the mining station still there. Ships moved between the asteroids. Work lights showed that mining continued as usual, but nobody answered his calls. "Human station, this is Captain requesting permission to dock," he broadcast on all channels. Nothing. He tried emergency frequencies. He tried personal communicators for humans he had worked with before. He even tried flashing his ship's lights in the old-fashioned signal patterns that some species still used. The human ships ignored him completely. It was as if he did not exist. Confused and angry, returned to space with a hold full of goods nobody wanted to buy. He filed a complaint with the Trade Commission about human rudeness and broken contracts. Similar reports started coming in from across the galaxy. Human colonies that had been friendly and talkative suddenly stopped all outside communication. They did not respond to trade offers, diplomatic messages, or even emergency calls. The humans were still there. Long-range sensors showed normal life signs, ongoing construction, and regular ship traffic between their own settlements, but they had simply stopped talking to anyone else. Doctor, a scientist who had been working with human researchers on quantum physics, sent increasingly desperate messages to her colleagues on Earth. The research project they had been developing together could revolutionize faster-than-light travel. It was too important to abandon over political problems. Her messages went into the void. No replies came back. 3 weeks after the council rejection, or called an emergency meeting with and the other senior council members. "We have a problem," the old announced. "The humans have not just accepted our decision, they have completely cut off all contact with the galaxy." Made a dismissive gesture. "So, we wanted them to stay away from civilized space. Now they are doing exactly what we asked." But this is not normal behavior for a rejected species, or insisted. Usually they try to maintain some diplomatic contact. They hope to change our minds eventually. These humans have just disappeared. A council member who looked like a giant butterfly with too many colors spoke up. "Perhaps they are planning some kind of revenge. Humans are violent. Maybe they are building weapons." "With what?" laughed. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their ships are slow and clumsy. Their weapons are primitive chemical explosives and simple lasers. What could they possibly do to threaten us?" But Or had been reading more human history. He had learned about something called the quiet before the storm. Humans had a saying about it. When everything went silent, that was when you should start worrying. "I recommend we send observation ships to monitor human space," he said carefully, "just to make sure they are not violating the quarantine terms." Considered this. It was a reasonable request. The quarantine required that humans stay within their own solar system. They had the right to check that the terms were being followed. "Very well," he decided. "Send a patrol squadron to observe the human system. But this is just a routine inspection. I am sure we will find them sulking on their little planet, licking their wounds like beaten animals." The patrol squadron consisted of 3 ships with the best sensors in the fleet. They were fast, well-armed, and crewed by experienced officers who had monitored dozens of quarantined species over the years. Captain commanded the squadron. He had been doing this job for 30 years and had seen every kind of quarantine violation imaginable. Some species tried to sneak ships out of their systems. Others built hidden bases on asteroids. A few had attempted to send secret messages to their allies. But when his squadron reached the edge of human space, found something he had never seen before. The humans were following the quarantine perfectly. No ships had left their solar system. All their activities were exactly where they were supposed to be. But something was very wrong. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, her voice puzzled, "I am reading massive industrial activity throughout the human system. Much more than our records indicate should be possible." Studied the displays. Construction activity around Earth had increased by over 300%. New structures were being built in the asteroid belt. The dark side of Luna showed heat signatures that suggested major excavation projects. "How many humans are supposed to live in this system?" he asked. "Approximately 4 billion on the planet, with maybe 50,000 in space-based colonies," his intelligence officer replied. "Then explain to me how they are supporting industrial activity that would normally require 10 times that population." Nobody had an answer. Captain prepared his report for the council with growing unease. The humans were not breaking any rules, but they were doing something that should have been impossible. And they were still not talking to anyone. When he tried to contact them directly, requesting permission to inspect their facilities as allowed under quarantine law, his messages disappeared into silence. The humans were there, they were active, they were busy. But they had stopped being the talkative, eager species that had first contacted the galaxy 5 years ago. Now they just worked and watched and waited in perfect silence. 6 months had passed since the Council's rejection of humanity, and the silence from human space had become something that kept alien leaders awake at night. What had started as simple communication problems was turning into something much more disturbing. Captain's reports grew stranger each week. His patrol squadron continued to monitor the edge of human space, but what they found made less sense each time. "The industrial activity is impossible," he told his fleet commander during their weekly briefing. "According to our calculations, The humans would need at least 20 billion workers to support what we are seeing, but their population has not changed. Commander's younger brother studied the sensor data with growing confusion. Could they have hidden populations we missed during first contact? No, sir. We mapped their entire system thoroughly. Every human settlement, every mining operation, every research station. The numbers do not add up. Was quiet for a long moment. What about automation? Could they be using robots? That level of automation would require technology far beyond what they possessed 6 months ago, replied. It would take decades to develop and implement. But the strangest reports were coming from other areas of the galaxy. Human settlements that had been established during the 5 years of diplomatic contact were still active, but they had become completely isolated. No ships arrived. No ships left. No communications went in or out. Doctor, the scientist, had finally convinced her government to send a ship to investigate the human research station she had been working with. The station was in orbit around a gas giant 40 light-years from Earth, far outside human space. When the investigation ship arrived, they found the station exactly where it should be. Lights were on. Life support was running. Sensor readings showed normal human life signs inside. But when they tried to dock, something very strange happened. Station Horizon, this is the ship Swift Discovery. We are here to check on Dr. Martinez and her research team. Please respond. No answer. They moved closer to the docking bay, following standard protocols for emergency assistance. But as their ship approached, the station's defensive systems came online. Not weapons, something much more unsettling. Sir, the ship's sensor officer reported, they are scanning us with technology I do not recognize. The power levels are much higher than anything humans were supposed to have. Captain ordered his ship to back away to a safe distance. Try communicating on emergency frequencies. Maybe their main systems are damaged. But every attempt at communication met with the same result: perfect silence. The humans in the station were clearly alive and active. Ship sensors could detect them moving around inside. Their equipment was functioning normally, but they simply would not respond to any outside contact. After 3 days of trying, Captain gave up and returned to space. His report added another piece to a growing puzzle that nobody understood. Similar incidents were happening across the galaxy. The trade ship that had been trying to contact the human mining station sent a small probe to investigate. The probe transmitted data for exactly 17 minutes before its signal went dead. No explosion, no interference. It just stopped transmitting. A diplomatic ship decided to visit the human colony on 442b, a planet where humans had established a small farming settlement. The colony had been one of the most successful human projects, selling food and organic materials to several alien species. The ship arrived to find the colony thriving. Crops grew in neat fields. Buildings looked well-maintained. But when they sent a landing party to the main settlement, something went wrong. Landing party to ship, came the first transmission. Colony appears normal. No signs of distress. Proceeding to main administrative building. 5 minutes later, ship, we are approaching the building. Still no contact with colonists, but we can see humans working in nearby fields. Then ship, something is wrong here. The humans can see us, but they are acting like we do not exist. They just keep working. That was the last transmission. The ship waited for 6 hours before sending a second landing party. They found the first team's equipment neatly stacked outside the administrative building. No signs of violence. No bodies. No evidence of what had happened to the missing aliens. The second team returned to their ship immediately and left the planet at maximum speed. Word of these incidents spread through galactic intelligence networks like wildfire. Species that had never cared about the primitive humans suddenly wanted to know what was happening in human space. or called another emergency council meeting. This time, even looked worried. We have lost contact with 7 investigation teams in the past month, or reported to the assembled council members. Ships approach human settlements and either turn back immediately or disappear entirely. What do you mean, disappear? Asked the spider-like crystalline representative. Gone, no wreckage, no distress signals, no trace of what happened to them. A nervous buzz filled the council chamber. Species that had mocked human primitiveness 6 months ago were now making worried sounds. Stood up his silver body reflecting the crystal lights above. This is impossible. Human technology is centuries behind ours. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak. They could not threaten a single one of our vessels, let alone multiple investigation teams. Unless, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber, we were wrong about their capabilities. The voice belonged to Fleet Admiral of the Empire. She was old with battle scars covering her dark blue skin. She had commanded fleets in 3 galactic conflicts and was considered one of the finest military minds in the galaxy. Explain, demanded. Human military history shows remarkable adaptation under pressure, Admiral said. When they face extinction, they do not just fight harder. They innovate faster than should be possible. She activated a display showing human historical data. During their Second World War, they increased aircraft production from 1,000 per year to 300,000 per year. In less than 4 years, when the survival of their species was threatened, they transformed their entire civilization. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You rejected them completely, Admiral continued. You told them they had no place in galactic civilization. You threatened them with a 1,000-year quarantine. From their perspective, you declared war on their future. Made a dismissive gesture. Even if that were true, what could they accomplish in 6 months? Advanced technology takes decades to develop. Not if you are willing to take risks that civilized species would never consider, the Admiral replied. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When they truly need something, they find ways to make it happen impossibly fast. Another council member, a floating energy being from the Photonic Collective, pulsed with nervous light. Are you suggesting that humans have somehow developed technology superior to ours in 6 months? I am suggesting that we do not know what they have developed, Admiral said, and that unknown is what should worry us. Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its confident tone. What do you recommend? Send a proper investigation fleet. Not 3 ships, but 300. Enough firepower to handle any possible threat, with the best sensors and shields we have available. To investigate a quarantined species that supposedly cannot threaten us. To investigate a quarantined species that has made 7 of our investigation teams disappear, without leaving any trace. The vote was closer this time, but the council approved the mission. Admiral herself would command the largest investigation fleet in galactic history. 300 ships from 12 different species, equipped with weapons and defenses that could destroy planets if necessary. As the meeting broke up, or approached the Admiral privately, "Do you really think the humans have become a threat to galactic security?" he asked. Admiral looked at the old philosopher with her large, dark eyes. Or, in my experience, the most dangerous enemy is the one you completely underestimate. 6 months ago, we told the humans they were worthless primitives who would never amount to anything. She paused, looking at the tactical displays that still showed the locations where investigation teams had vanished. Now they have stopped talking to us entirely. When a warrior stops making threats and starts working in silence, that is when you should begin to worry. What do you think we will find when we reach human space? I honestly do not know, Admiral admitted. But I have read enough human military history to know that we should prepare for something we have never seen before. 2 weeks later, the largest fleet ever assembled for a simple investigation mission began its journey toward the edge of human space. 300 ships carrying the hopes and fears of hundreds of species. None of them knew that human censors had been watching their preparations since the moment the Council voted to approve the mission. Deep in the asteroid belt of the Sol system, in facilities that had not existed 6 months earlier, human military planners received the intelligence reports with calm satisfaction. Fleet composition confirmed, reported a technician to the command center buried beneath Luna's surface. 300 ships, mixed technology, estimated arrival in 4 days. General, now wearing a uniform with more stars than anyone had ever seen before, nodded slowly. Status of our preparations. All fleets are in position. Manufacturing is ahead of schedule. New weapon systems have completed testing. Looked at the massive display showing the approaching alien fleet. It was impressive by any galactic standard. 6 months ago, it would have been unstoppable. Was right, he said quietly. They still do not understand what they are dealing with. Sir, what are your orders for when they arrive? Smiled the same knowing smile that had shone in the council chamber. We show them exactly what humanity has been doing with our 6 months of silence. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Vigilance, watching the final preparations for the investigation fleet. 300 ships from 12 species hung in perfect formation around her vessel. It was the largest peaceful fleet ever assembled in galactic history. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, her communications officer announced. Lieutenant Orr was young for a with bright purple skin that showed her excitement. This was her first major mission. Sensors, Admiral asked. All systems operating at maximum efficiency. If the humans have hidden anything in their system, we will find it. Weapons. Armed but powered down, as per Council orders. We are here to investigate, not to fight. Admiral nodded, but something felt wrong. In 40 years of military service, she had learned to trust her instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming warnings she could not ignore. Begin hyperspace jump. Destination, edge of Sol system. The stars stretched into lines of light, and 300 ships vanished from normal space. The journey to human space normally took 12 hours at maximum hyperspace speed. During those 12 hours, Admiral reviewed everything they knew about human military capabilities. The files made for depressing reading. Human ships were slow and clumsy compared to modern galactic vessels. Their fastest ships could barely reach half the speed of average fighters. Their weapons were primitive kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. Their shields were weak electromagnetic fields that any serious weapon could pierce easily. Most importantly, they had only been in space for 50 years. Most galactic species had been exploring the stars for thousands of years before achieving the kind of technology needed for real warfare. There has to be something we are missing, she told her senior staff during the briefing. 7 investigation teams do not just disappear because of primitive weapons. Commander, her tactical officer, brought up the sensor readings from previous missions. Perhaps the humans have developed some kind of stealth technology. They could be hiding ships we cannot detect. Possible, but unlikely. Stealth technology requires massive energy expenditures. Human power generation is still mostly fusion-based. They simply do not have enough energy to power fleet-scale stealth systems. What about allies? Suggested Captain N, the intelligence officer. Maybe another species has been secretly helping them develop new technology. Admiral considered this. Also possible, but which species? Everyone on the council voted against human membership. Nobody wants to risk their own standing by helping a rejected species. The discussion continued for hours, but no one could come up with a satisfactory explanation for what was happening in human space. When they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, Admiral immediately knew something was very wrong. "Sensor report," she ordered. Lieutenant Orr stared at her displays in confusion. "Admiral, I am reading massive energy signatures throughout the human system, much larger than anything in our previous intelligence reports." "Define massive." "Industrial activity levels consistent with a Class 5 civilization." Admiral felt cold despite the warm bridge atmosphere. Class 5 civilizations were what the Council called advanced galactic powers. Species like the, and the Ancient. It took thousands of years to develop that level of industrial capacity. "Double-check your readings." "Confirmed, Admiral. The energy output from human activities has increased by over 2,000% since our last observation 6 months ago." Commander leaned over his tactical displays. "Admiral, I am also detecting unknown structures throughout the asteroid belt, large constructions that were not there during previous surveys." "Show me." The main display lit up with a three-dimensional map of the Sol system. Red dots marked known human settlements from 6 months ago. Blue dots showed new structures detected by their sensors. There were hundreds of blue dots. "This is impossible," Admiral whispered. "How do you build hundreds of major installations in 6 months?" "Maybe they were already there, hidden somehow," Lieutenant Orr suggested hopefully. "No, our previous surveys were thorough. We mapped every asteroid larger than a small moon. These structures are new." Admiral made a decision that probably saved her fleet. "All ships, maintain position at system edge. Do not advance until we understand what we are dealing with." For the next 6 hours, the investigation fleet conducted the most detailed sensor sweep in galactic history. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had been transformed into a massive industrial complex. Hundreds of mining operations extracted metals and rare elements at impossible speeds. Manufacturing facilities that would have taken decades to build appeared to have been constructed in months. Most disturbing were the energy readings from Luna, Earth's moon. The dark side showed heat signatures indicating vast underground complexes that definitely had not existed 6 months earlier. "Admiral," Commander reported, his voice tight with worry, "I am detecting what appears to be a shipyard in high Earth orbit. The energy signature suggests it is larger than anything in the fleet." "How large?" "Large enough to build dreadnought-class vessels, possibly larger." Admiral felt her hearts beating faster, had 2 hearts, and right now both were working overtime. "Are you detecting any actual ships under construction?" "Negative, but, Admiral, there is something else. I am reading gravitational anomalies throughout the system, as if there are large masses that my sensors cannot detect directly." "Stealth ships?" "Unknown. The gravitational signatures suggest vessels, but I cannot get any direct sensor contact." For the first time in 40 years of military service, Admiral felt genuinely afraid. An enemy you could see and fight was manageable. An enemy you could not see was terrifying. "Communications, send a message to the humans. Standard diplomatic protocols. Request permission to enter their system for the investigation authorized by the Galactic Council." Lieutenant Orr worked at her console for several minutes before looking up with a puzzled expression. "Admiral, I cannot establish contact with any human facility. It is as if my communications are being absorbed somehow." "Technical malfunction?" "Negative. All systems are functioning normally. The signals are being transmitted, but something is preventing them from reaching their targets." Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then she made the most important decision of her career. "All ships prepare for immediate withdrawal to Council space." "Admiral," Commander looked surprised. "We have not completed the investigation." Commander, I have been in space warfare for 40 years. I have fought pirates, raiders, and hostile civilizations. I know the difference between a normal threat and something completely unknown. She gestured to the sensor displays showing the transformed Sol system. This level of industrial development in 6 months is not just impressive. It is impossible using any technology we understand. Either the humans have had secret help from a species far more advanced than anything we have encountered, or they have somehow developed capabilities that make them more dangerous than we can imagine. But they are still just humans, Lieutenant Orr protested. Primitive violent children, as the Council called them. Lieutenant, those primitive violent children have just made 7 of our investigation teams disappear without leaving any evidence. They have somehow built an industrial civilization that rivals our greatest powers in 6 months, and they have stopped talking to us entirely. Admiral looked around the bridge at her senior staff. In my experience, when an enemy stops making threats and starts working in complete silence, that is when they are most dangerous. Before anyone could respond, Lieutenant Orr's console erupted in warning signals. Admiral, I am detecting massive energy signatures approaching our position. Multiple contacts, moving at high speed. From where? Unknown, they just appeared on sensors. No hyperspace signatures, no engine emissions. It is as if they materialized out of empty space. On the main display, dozens of red contacts appeared, moving toward the investigation fleet with impossible speed and precision. Evasive maneuvers, Admiral ordered. All ships prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. But as her ships tried to turn away, something happened that made her blood freeze. The approaching contacts stopped exactly at the edge of what would be considered threatening range. They formed a perfect sphere around the investigation fleet, maintaining precise distance and spacing. It was the kind of coordination that required either a unified command system, far more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen, or— Admiral, Commander said quietly, these ships are not just coordinated. They are responding to our movements before we make them. It is as if they know what we are going to do before we do it. A new contact appeared on the sensors. A single ship, much smaller than the others, approaching slowly from the direction of Earth. Admiral, Lieutenant Orr announced, the approaching vessel is requesting permission to dock with our ship. They are requesting permission. Yes, Admiral, standard diplomatic language. They want to send a representative aboard. Admiral stared at the tactical display. Hundreds of unknown ships surrounded her fleet with technology that seemed impossible, and now they wanted to talk. Permission granted, but full security alert. I want weapons ready and shields up. Admiral, Commander said quietly, if their technology is as advanced as it appears, our weapons and shields will not matter. I know, Admiral replied, but I want to maintain the illusion that we have some control over this situation. 20 minutes later, a human transport craft docked with her flagship. Admiral waited in the main docking bay with a full honor guard, not sure whether she was greeting a diplomatic envoy or surrendering to a superior enemy. The airlock opened, and a single human stepped through. Admiral recognized her immediately from the Council recordings. Ambassador walked across the docking bay with the same calm confidence she had shown 6 months ago. She wore a simple black uniform with no visible weapons. Her smile was polite, but somehow different from the one she had worn in the Council chamber. Admiral said, stopping exactly the right distance away for diplomatic protocols. Thank you for accepting our invitation to talk. We have been expecting you. Expecting us? Yes, we have been tracking your fleet since you left Council space 2 weeks ago. We wanted to make sure you arrived safely. Admiral felt a chill that had nothing to do with the environmental systems. How did you track us through hyperspace? Smile grew slightly wider. Admiral, we have a great deal to discuss, but perhaps we should do so somewhere more comfortable than a docking bay. As they walked toward the conference room, Admiral could not shake the feeling that she was no longer the one in command of this situation. Outside, hundreds of invisible human ships maintained their perfect formation around the largest investigation fleet in galactic history. Waiting. The conference room aboard the Eternal Vigilance had been designed to impress visitors with military power. Dark metal walls were covered with battle honors from a dozen conflicts. The central table was made from a single piece of rare crystal that cost more than most planets' annual budgets. Sat across from Admiral as if she owned the room. Her calm confidence made the impressive decorations seem almost childish by comparison. "You have questions," said simply. "I am here to provide answers." Admiral studied the human ambassador carefully. 6 months ago, had been representing a species that barely qualified for galactic contact. Now she sat surrounded by hundreds of ships with technology that seemed impossible. "Let us start with the obvious question," Admiral said. "How did you build an industrial complex that rivals our greatest civilizations in 6 months?" Activated a small device she had brought with her. A holographic display appeared above the conference table, showing detailed images of the Sol system. "Admiral, you are thinking about this incorrectly. You assume we built something new. What we actually did was unleash something that was already there." The display showed Earth as it had been 6 months ago, with its modest space installations and small orbital facilities. "When your council rejected humanity, you made a critical error in judgment. You saw our violence, our conflicts, our problems, and you concluded that we were primitives who could never amount to anything." The image changed, showing the same system as it appeared today. Massive industrial complexes filled the asteroid belt. Luna's dark side glowed with energy from underground facilities. Orbital platforms surrounded Earth like a metal web. "What you failed to understand is that everything you saw as weakness was actually strength you had never encountered before." Stood up and walked to the holographic display. With a gesture, it zoomed in to show human factory complexes working at impossible speed. "Our violence taught us to innovate under pressure like no other species in the galaxy. Our conflicts taught us to mobilize entire populations when survival is threatened. Our problems taught us to find solutions that others would never consider." Admiral stared at the images. This level of construction would require billions of workers operating around the clock for years. "You are correct," agreed. "Under normal circumstances. But humans do not operate under normal circumstances when our species faces extinction." The display changed again, showing massive automated manufacturing systems. 6 months ago, every human on Earth received the same message. The galaxy had declared that we had no future among the stars. We were condemned to isolation for 1,000 years. Our children and their children would live and die as prisoners in our own solar system. His voice remained calm, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Admiral, do you know what happens when you threaten the future of human children?" "I assume you become more determined." "We become something else entirely." The holographic display now showed production statistics that made Admiral's heart skip beats. Factory output had increased by 3,000%. Mining operations extracted resources at rates that should have been physically impossible. Most disturbing, weapon production showed numbers that exceeded the combined output of all galactic military forces. "The Council was correct about one thing," continued. "Humans are violent, but what you did not understand is that our violence is not random destruction. It is focused, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless when directed at threats to our survival." Admiral found her voice. "You are telling me that your entire species united to build all of this in 6 months?" "Not united, Admiral. We transcended unity. For the first time in human history, every single person on Earth shared the same goal. Ensure that our species has a future among the stars, regardless of what the galaxy wants. Returned to her seat, and the display shifted to show ship construction facilities. During our Second World War, we increased aircraft production from 1,000 per year to 300,000 per year in less than 4 years. That was when only one continent was threatened, and we were fighting with primitive technology. She paused, letting the implications sink in. This time, our entire species was threatened, and we had access to galactic technology samples from 5 years of diplomatic contact. Impossible. Technology transfer takes decades of research and development. For species that approach problems like civilized beings, yes. But humans do not approach existential threats like civilized beings, Admiral. We approach them like the violent primitives your council correctly identified us to be. The display now showed weapon systems that Admiral did not recognize, energy readings that exceeded anything in galactic databases, ship designs that seemed to ignore several fundamental laws of physics. We took every piece of technology we had encountered through diplomatic contact and asked a simple question: how can we make this into something that will ensure our survival? Gestured to the unknown weapons on display. Your species developed technology carefully, testing each advancement for decades before implementation. You follow safety protocols and ethical guidelines. You seek consensus among your people before making major changes, as civilized beings should. Perhaps, but when a species of violent primitives faces extinction, we do not have time for safety protocols. We do not wait for consensus. We simply build what we need to survive, regardless of the risks. Admiral realized she was looking at weapons that had been developed and deployed in months, using principles that galactic science would never approve. What you are describing sounds like reckless experimentation that could have destroyed your entire civilization. It could have, agreed cheerfully, but the alternative was certain extinction, so the risk seemed acceptable. The holographic display changed to show the current human fleet. Admiral stared in growing horror at ship counts that exceeded her worst fears. How many ships do you have? Currently operational, 47,832 vessels of various classes. The number hit Admiral like a physical blow. The entire galactic fleet combined numbered fewer than 20,000 ships. That is impossible. You could not have built that many ships in 6 months. Admiral, you are still thinking about this the wrong way. We did not build ships the way civilized species build ships. We built them the way humans build things when our children's lives depend on it. Stood again and walked to the viewport showing the space around the eternal vigilance. Admiral joined her and immediately wished she had not. The space around the investigation fleet was no longer empty. Thousands of human ships hung in perfect formation, having somehow appeared without triggering any sensors. They ranged from small fighters to massive vessels that dwarfed even the largest galactic dreadnoughts. Stealth technology, Admiral whispered. Not exactly. More like technology your sensors were never designed to detect because no civilized species would ever build it. Turned back to face the Admiral. You see, when humans decide that something needs to exist, we do not ask whether it should be possible. We simply make it possible. What do you want from us? The question hung in the air for a long moment. Its expression became thoughtful, almost sad. Admiral, 6 months ago, we wanted to be your partners. We wanted to learn from you and contribute to galactic civilization. We wanted our children to grow up as part of something larger and more wonderful than just humanity. She gestured toward the massive fleet surrounding them. The Council took that dream away from us, so we built our own dream. Are you planning to attack Council space? Looked genuinely surprised. Attack you? Admiral, why would we attack you? You have given us exactly what we needed. I do not understand. The Council's rejection taught humanity something we had never fully understood about ourselves. When we are threatened with extinction, we do not just survive, we evolve. Walked back to the holographic display, which now showed star maps extending far beyond current galactic borders. 6 months ago, we were asking for permission to be junior members of your galactic community. Today, we are no longer interested in membership. Then what do you want? Smile was the same one she had worn when leaving the council chamber 6 months ago, but now Admiral understood what it really meant. We want you to know that the quarantine is over, not because you have lifted it, but because we no longer recognize your authority to impose it. The star map expanded, showing human expansion plans that extended in all directions from Sol. Humanity is going to the stars, Admiral. We are going to build colonies, explore new worlds, and create the civilization we want our children to inherit. The Council may choose to accept this reality and establish peaceful relations with us, or you may choose to attempt to stop us. Gestured toward the weapons display, still showing impossible technology. But understand that we are no longer the species that asked politely for membership in your community. We are the species that spent 6 months learning what we are truly capable of when our children's future is threatened. Admiral stared at the fleet surrounding her ships, realizing with growing dread that humanity had not just gained the ability to defend themselves. They had gained the ability to do whatever they wanted. What happens to the galaxy if we choose to attempt to stop you? Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but absolutely certain. Admiral, I hope you never find out. Because the species that built this fleet in 6 months of focused effort is not the species you want as an enemy. She moved toward the door, then turned back one last time. Please give the Council a message from humanity. We thank you for the rejection. It taught us who we really are, and now that we know, well, the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place. After left, Admiral stood alone in the conference room for a long time, staring out at the impossible human fleet. Finally, she activated her communication system. All ships prepare for immediate return to Council space. Priority message for the Galactic Conquered. The quarantine of humanity is terminated, not by our choice, but by theirs. She paused, thinking about how to explain what she had seen. Tell the Council that we were wrong about human limitations. We were wrong about their technology. We were wrong about their unity. We were wrong about everything. Outside, the human fleet began to disperse, heading toward stars that had never seen human ships before. Most importantly, Admiral added to her message, tell them that humanity is no longer asking for our permission to walk among the stars. They are informing us that they are doing so. As her investigation fleet prepared for the journey back to Council space, Admiral realized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed in the past 6 months. The question now was whether the galactic community could adapt to a universe where humanity was no longer seeking permission. They were simply taking their place among the stars and daring anyone to try to stop them. The age of asking was over. The age of walking forth in silence had begun.